Well, I do declare, what have we here? These eyes of hope, yearning, angst. It must mean one thing, teen, and comes the age. We'll try the new page. So where did this teen get these keen clothes back in 1937? As we look here at an idealized vision of teenage attire and of course the behavior that would come along with that. These teen girls are working during World War II on leg makeup to make the legs look like they're wearing nylon stockings at a time when nylon was going to the military to help the war effort and soldiers to get parachutes. What we have here is a dancer doing the Lindy Hop. The what? The Lindy Hop. Trucking and posing, part of the jitterbug craze, the mad fad time. And this young man is wearing, heaven forbid, the wonderful look of the zoot suit. Try that chain on for size. You know, you'll get quite the prize. And here we're working on the flat foot floogie, another dance style. What will these kids think of next? Well, I'll tell you, they'll think of swallowing goldfish. That'll impress the ladies who are wearing their amazing bobby socks and saddle shoes of the 30s and 40s. So what about teenagers? What are they supposed to be like? What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to say? How are they supposed to look? Well, this young lady's shmoo book from 1949 in a magazine called Physical Culture, aimed at teens, tells them what to eat, how to stay in shape, whether or not to pet, and that's not a kitty, and what should a teenager know about. Along about the same time, post-World War II in 1947 came 17 magazine, which was actually for 17-year-olds and eventually became for 14-year-olds. And we have the old hyphenated teenage America, because the word teenager hadn't been coined yet. The 50's were still to come. Here she is, Miss Teenage America. And so, folks, it just seemed like everything was so peachy. Why, we can play tennis, we can play football, we can do the track for a dime, get our little binder folder, and all of the other neat sporting things that guys and girls can do. Something had to change. Something would come along like an earthquake and shatter the calm, the norm, the decency, the slight rebelliousness of youth, and bam, there it was. Bill Haley and his Comets, rock and roll music. The future would never be the same after rock around the clock, and those 45 RPM records just kept on coming. Jan and Dean, ultimate legends in surf music eventually, telling Jeanette exactly what she needed to do with her hair, part one. Well, Rock Around the Clock would shake, rattle, and roll things with Bill Haley's second major hit, Shake, Rattle, and Roll, with his Comets doing their hot rod kind of danger boy thing. Meanwhile, Jerry Lee Lewis hits the scene as kind of another rockabilly, and along came a parade of amazing artists, figures, and legends in rock and roll music. Elvis the Pelvis. Now, many girls wish that they might, but not to be, ladies, even though the marketing was all about the teen female mania for the dreamboat, the swingin'est dreamboat of them all, Elvis Presley. So the crowds, the throngs of adoring, idealizing, wistful, romantic, and otherwise fans really did want to go on with the show. And then came the parade of Elvis imitators. Yes, America's favorite TV family, the Nelsons, on Ozzie and Harriet, with rocking Ricky Nelson. Pretty much dreamboat eyes too, wouldn't you say? But not limited to just the white folks. Chuck Berry, the king of rock and roll in the more modern sense of rock guitar. Chuck Berry, arguably the greatest original straight hard rock and roll player of all time. A master of the guitar. Johnny B. Good, man, it's gotta be rock and roll music. So when Chuck Berry hit the charts, the irony was that rock and roll music, which started out with African American roots, rhythm and blues, moving into a hybrid with country western, he was the first true black rock and roller in the modern 50s scene. Well, modern is relative. Then along came the day the music died. Ritchie Valens, the legendary Buddy Holly, and the Big Bopper all perished in an airplane crash en route to a concert, and gave legend to the first of the rock martyrs. Meanwhile, Dick Clark on American Bandstand promoting all these great rock and rollers, helping keep America clean, suppressing the image of rock and roll as wild, dangerous, out of control, too sexual, and too teen value corrupting. Ricky Nelson's looking mighty clean. Frankie Cannon's looking mighty clean. The fabulous Fabian is looking mighty clean. And Frankie Avalon, by God, they're all looking mighty clean. Well, Vic Morrow here playing in the Blackboard Jungle isn't looking mighty clean. Mr. Daddy-O is looking mighty clean. And Sidney Poitier in the classroom is looking reasonably clean. But it's the beginning of the teenage gangster movie. Teenage thugs, violence, and rebelliousness out of control. We've somehow got to get back to basic rock and roll. So, hey kids, rock and roll's okay. It's not bad for you. You can have your own little rock and roll dance party. Mighty clean, relatively. And, you know, maybe there's just some better music for these kids. Let's meet the Lennon Sisters. Traditional, good old American mainstream music. We've got Kathy and Diane and Janet and Peggy singing all kinds of nifty songs. Let's get acquainted, little white lies, young and in love. We're keeping it clean, we're keeping it mainstream. And you know, we really need some social hygiene here. A girl and her figure. Idealized teenage. Let's bring it back to the way it was in the 1930s. But then again, something seems to be happening here in America, and part of what unleashes the devil is... What's a nation and a culture to do when you see yourself sliding down the road to perdition? The highway to hell, as a rock song would later call it. Well, you have to get on the beam. Now, James Dean, the teen idol in The Rebel Without a Cause, showed the angst of teenagers, their rebelliousness, their youth, their twisted, torn, and tormented swings of emotion, and his parents didn't understand him. But what America understood was we needed to clean it up. So let's start with the mop chop. Go to barber school. Keep the cuts clean, gang. And to help clean it up, let's deal with how these kids date. That's right. Make sure that when they're dating, they obey the standards of behavior. Refrain from alcohol use during dating years. Make sure their family understands what they're doing during dating and permits it to a point. And then, of course, the ultimate goal, to keep it clean, straight, and along the narrow when you're picking a mate, is that the date becomes the mate selection. And we'll look towards marriage and make sure, kids, that you're ready and engaged somewhere, ladies, between the age of 17 or 21, because you wouldn't want to be a spinster. But were textbooks as this, called Personal Adjustment, Marriage and Family Living, enough to offset the corruptive influence of rock? Pretty basic. That's right. Jimmy Daly and the Dinglings are on there doing their rock and roll thing with yet another one of those short hairs quasi-Elvis looks alike, Fabian. Actually, that's Salminio, but it sounded like better to say Fabian. Uh-oh, looks like the beast is unleashed again. Who knows what this will bring? It'll bring cruising. It'll bring Where Were You in 62? High school romances, the hop, cruising up and down the strip looking for, well, not pinballs, but invariably trouble, mayhem. American Graffiti, Where Were You in 62 is the 1973 retrospective on the last of the so-called clean teen scene days and what would follow. Now, never mind the habits and the allure of the great American diet that united both adults and teens alike in terms of their culinary preferences. We're talking more about the drive-in and into what do you drive on these roller-skated, hot-rodded, drive-up joints. Now, the drive-in was part of American 50s consumer culture and, of course, teen culture, starting with Top Hat and other drive-in restaurants where uniformed young ladies would bring your food straight to your car. Hey, there's a way to deal with social distancing in these days. Why anybody'd want to go to this particular drive-in, I'm not sure. But boy, you can eat in your car. How great could that possibly be? Maybe Larry even has ice cream. Of course, by the new millennium, the drive-ins were gone and the drive-up windows, well, you never know what you're gonna get on a given evening. But we digress. So along came, after this sort of cruising the main and drive-in, car hop, roller skating, burger joint generation, along came something new that's gonna change things yet again. Healthy on the outside, but culturally earth-shattering on the inside. Surfing! Hawaiian sport becomes totally SoCal, gives rise to the Beach Boys. That's the Beach Boys, of course, who are always singing and thinking about beach girls being beach girls. Jan and Dean were kind of the pioneers and the original architects of electronic rock and roll inspired surf music. Catch a wave. Jan and Dean caught that wave, but the Beach Boys hijacked it with their mellifluous musical harmonic talents. So naturally, what we're gonna have to do here is get Chubby Checker back in on the game because the twist has been twisted out. So he's gonna do the beach party thing, the new cultural milieu, until something else would dawn in the near future of the year 1964. Woo woo, the magic bus, straight from perdition or straight from above. Here it comes in 67, the summer of love. San Francisco starts up this whole business in the late 1965 period and blazing its way into 1966 as acid rock bands headlined by the likes of the Grateful Dead, the Jefferson Airplane, and other local bands, Country Joe and the Fish, lead rise to a generation of hippies in the Haight-Ashbury scene. Of course, we gotta try to keep it clean, so let's take the favorite teen idol of little girls, marry her with a touch of psychedelic fashion, and market Barbie as sort of hippie flower child Barbie, but also stylish and routine fashion scene Barbie. And of course, Barbie is starting to get a grip on the other things that are changing in the 60s, which has to do with civil rights, integration. But what can stop the rising tide of hungry freaks, Daddy? Yes, pretentious, outrageous, outlandish, ever rebellious, socially challenging hippie bands, Country Joe and the Fish, taking on political and cultural and social types of arrogance, visions of beauty, hope, and peace, but not necessarily workable, as the summer of love turns out to be a summer of faded dreams. But we've got to keep the marketing going on the psychedelic hippie thing and try to straighten and clean it up. So let's take a drink of Wink. Yes, another 7-Up imitator, which people didn't really like because like wasn't enough like. But you just aren't going to be able to stop the power of these kids who want to be born to be wild and the onset of Easy Rider in 1968.